Today's question comes from Amy Littman regarding pain at the knee during a lunge. I want to show you a couple options. I have the clinical reformer, so you may not have this black knob to stabilize a yoga block against. But if you do, then you can do this version. And if you don't, at least it gives you an idea. You can always place it against something as well. I will oftentimes put a yoga block at the front and the hands on, and then teach the students the lunge mechanics in this position as well. To show you the lunge mechanics from the side and to describe most commonly, unless there's an underlying injury or reason for this, it's most common that the body weight, the upper body weight, is traveling into the knee as opposed to into the pelvis. To explain that, my goal during a lunge is to make sure that when they lower down, the body weight is traveling back and down into the hip. Now, you will notice, if you're using this example, that if the body weight is traveling forward into the knee, after a couple reps, you're going to have a huge divot in this foam because we're loading the knee and it's pushing into that black knob. So that's really important to understand, because when we're lowering in the lowering phase into a lunge, the body weight is going back into the hip, not forward into the knee. That's going to help a lot. Number two, when I'm raising up, is the yoga block coming away and dropping, or the knee coming away and dropping the yoga block? If so, that's an indicator to you I'm primarily using the knee joint to lift up. Now, if I'm using the hip, and if you think about it, it's basically doing a bridge, a hip bridge. If I'm doing it correctly, my pelvis weight is going to travel up and forward, allowing the knee joint to be a secondary joint, not a primary joint. So, rule of thumb, lowering phase, weight goes into hip, not knee. Raising phase, pelvis comes up and forward as opposed to the knee joint backwards. Those are going to help tremendously when you understand those basic formats. Now, for all of you that are members with the website, and when this is recorded, the website isn't released, so just to let you know, but for future, there is a full tutorial on lunge mechanics that describes the biomechanical principles of lunge. And definitely, if you're a member, you want to watch that. For those of you that are just like scrolling through my YouTube, there you can always join the website when it's launched. You can ask questions and comments about that. But I wanted to address this because this question Amy asked was quite some time ago, and I'm finally getting around to it. Here's the other option. Take a band. If you don't have this as an option either, you can always, try something different by, putting that band around something else. So I want to really get a sense whether that is occurring on the way up. So if you don't have the option for the yoga block and it's going to drop, you can feel just by maintaining that vertical shin, whether I'm going forward, backwards. If I go forward, I'm going to feel this change. So that's a kinesthetic sensation. So I'm going to keep that relatively the same as I go up and down. So this is going to also provide feedback. Now, the other option that I did in the beginning before I started using these two little tricks to teach my students that were having knee pain and what they were doing is I would just sit aside the carriage, put one hand in front of their shin bone and the other hand behind their calf. And I told them to make sure they never push into either one of my hands. Because then that means if they are pushing forward, they're loading the knee. If they're pulling it backwards, they're overly using the knee. And once you get to understand the basic principles of movement, that it's always in the hips. The last but not least, and I go more in depth on this in the lunge mechanics video, when you're coming up from a lunge, when the pelvis is coming up, it oftentimes, so here's the knee joint, oftentimes instead of doing this and then going over the knee in a lunge, I will see 3/4 of the way up, and then to straighten the leg, they're pushing the knee joint back, as opposed to pelvis, 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 pelvis up over the knee. What causes pain in the raising phase is pelvis, 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 knee, and then lock themselves out to come up to standing. So get to understand, unload the knee both on the up and the down phase using these concepts and tools. Make sure you watch the full-length video lunge tutorial, and you can go online too and get some really great tools to understand how to do it when you don't have this, other than using the reformer. If you don't have a reformer, you can go to fitness videos and find it. The last thing I want to say is when you're going from a step back lunge, which is basically what the reformer teaches. It's a reverse lunge, not a forward lunge. There are some exercises on forward lunging that I address, but typically in a reformer class, we're always going that way in a lunge. When we are going in a fitness class and we're starting to step forward into a lunge, we need to think about where we're placing that foot. And am I vertical on my shin? That's number one. Am I vertical on my shin? If I'm going backwards, am I stabilizing here and powering with my right glute? Because if I'm coming back and I'm using my knee, it's also going to hurt me. So I have to think about this as hip extension, and I'm coming up to get some glute activation. Hopefully I addressed your question, Amy. Hopefully that even though this is a quick little Q&A, that you got some understanding and you can start using those concepts to build a better environment so your students and yourself and anybody else watching this will have less pain incident when doing a lunge. Thanks for watching.